Hello and welcome to Hugh's Reviews, the place for movie views and spoiler clues. This movie is one of the worst pieces of contrived crapstorm garbage I have ever had the misfortune to watch. I hate every single person who was involved in its production, and I hate everyone who likes it. This piece of filth is a plague-ridden boil on humanity's. You know what? I'm just kidding. This movie was pretty good. Let's talk about Shazam. When I sat down to watch Shazam, I wasn't sure what to expect. I know I'm going to get some flack for this, but the DCEU has been a near universal disaster to this point. The only bright spot was the better than okay Wonder Woman, and that's only because Warner Brothers and DC Comics seemingly cared so little about the movie that they kept their grimy interfering mitts off it long enough for it to succeed. For the most part, the DCEU has been a game of catch-up, seeing what Marvel did that year successfully, and then scrambling to rewrite and reshoot huge portions of their movies to meet the high bar. While Marvel was somehow making a talking tree the most heartwarming character in a decade, DC was furiously digi-scrubbing off mustaches. All you need to look at to see my point is the ad campaign for Suicide Squad and the choppy mess that movie became. So, when they announced Shazam, I wasn't exactly excited. And then came the trailers. This looks fun, but it's such a goofy premise, and DC has made a point of making every movie they put out dark and gritty. Could they actually pull off a bright and colorful comedy filled with superpowers and magic? The answer is apparently yeah. The movie does start pretty DC dark, and it was awesome. An abusive family, a scared little kid, a car crash that nearly kills them all, and hissing demons tempting someone to the dark side? All the while, a roaring old man declares a child unworthy and evil. What the heck even is this? The trailer made it look light and cute, and now we're facing the 7 deadly sins and blood and destruction? Jeez, guys! But this is called character building, something the DC movies to this point have been missing, at least when it comes to understanding their heroes. You see, that's been my biggest problem with the DCEU so far. They don't seem to understand their own core characters. Batman doesn't just kill guys and punish people. His very essence is wrapped up in the mission to prevent the evils that destroyed his family from touching others. Superman isn't simply a nigh omnipotent god-man. He is at his core a hopeful person, always believing in the goodness of humankind and striving to help them see it. But I guess when you give a fan of Ayn Rand the reins, they become something else entirely. Zack Snyder only saw their power, not their humanity, and the efforts to force-feed the audience said humanity at the last possible second rang hollow. You know what scene I'm talking about. The DCEU villains were also a mess, kind of like the Marvel MCU villains in stages 1 and 2. The DC comics have some of the greatest villains in literary history, and what we got on screen was a cheesy, bombastically confused melodrama, a Lex Luthor more akin to the 1960s Riddler on an overdose of Adderall than an actual threat, and it just went on from there. The one claim DC could always make was their rogues gallery was far stronger than Marvel's, and this is what they gave us? Meanwhile, in spite of initial failures with their villains, the Marvel movies somehow went on to make a genocidal maniac, a homicidal Birdman, and a planet literally named Ego actually relatable. A little shout out to Michael Shannon as Zod, though. That part could have been amazing for you if they hadn't screwed you over. Well done, sir. But then, when you remove Snyder's influence from the equation, as we see here in Shazam, heroes can finally get back to being what they should be. Heroes. And that is the point of this movie. What makes a hero? When Billy Batson, as played by Zachary Angel, comes on the scene, he is a street-smart runaway, tricking cops, reveling in his own cleverness, but his overall mission is to find the mother he lost as a little kid. The core of this kid isn't the crimes he has committed, it is his desire to have a family, to feel valued. If only he can reunite with his mother, he can regain that value. When he is caught and placed in yet another foster home, he immediately rejects them. The well-meaning foster parents, the kids that live there, even his handicapped foster brother Freddie, played by Jack Grazer, are all shunned. These people are not his family. At his core, though, Billy is still a good kid, and when bullies start picking on Freddie, he jumps in to defend him. A chase ensues through the city streets, and due to a little sprinkle of magic and wonder, Billy Batson finds himself standing in the chambers of the great wizard, Shazam. for some reason played by the criminally underused Jaimon Hansu. Why the heck have this great actor play a bit part and cover his face with a glued-on Monty Python beard? Anyways, Billy is to become the bearer of Shazam's great power, and if he would only grasp the wizard's staff and call his name, he shall become a hero. Little tip, kids, if a guy tells you to grab his staff and yell his name, call an adult. Fast. Stranger danger is real. Stay safe. But Billy doesn't know that apparently, and winds up transformed into a 6'4" bemuscled man of steel, wearing red tights and a cape that kinda looks like grandma curtains. From here on in, he must discover his purpose as a hero and learn that family is more than blood. The acting in this movie is a lot of fun. Zachary Levi as the bemuscled Shazam manages to evoke the characteristics of a 14-year-old kid without being condescending. Despite his imposing adult appearance, he is supposed to be a pubescent teenage boy inside, right? And he does that gleefully. It brings to mind Patrick Warburton playing the Tick in the early 2000s, without the obvious brain damage. He's innocent in some ways, street hard in others. Meanwhile, the entire purpose of the Shazam legacy being passed on to Billy was to combat the 7 deadly sins, right? And not once do we see Billy as Shazam give in any overt way, to any of them. Sloth, greed, lust, envy, pride, gluttony, wrath. He is immune to their pull, and is simply a little selfish and self-aggrandizing. Not giving in to pride, but being a bit of a show-off. Billy may be a dork, but his goals are just goofy kid fun, not avaricious or lustful. He doesn't want things for their own means. He's not greedy. He just wants to be loved. And that brings me to the villain. Mark Strong as Savannah may seem at first glance to be a one-note symphony, but the writing allows us more insight than that. We can see that there is a reason behind his actions, and the final reveal of the one sin that holds him brings it all together. Billy and Savannah are both broken in very similar ways. They have merely taken different paths based on their brokenness. One leads to destruction and the other to fulfillment. Both are besieged with obsession, but while one is the obsession of conquest and power, the other has the obsession of love. Both desire a familial acceptance and both reject it to some degree, but they go about it in very different ways. Their similarities are at the heart of their conflict. They mirror the parts of themselves they fear to face, and the battle of opposites makes for great storytelling. Rocky and Drago, Batman and the Joker, Santa Claus and a salad. Put these things together and you've got a compelling struggle on your hands. Throughout the movie, I noticed small things that kind of made me love it. Shazam moves in a strange chest-forward strut as if the kid inside thinks this is the way a superhero walks. He looks uncomfortably funny, and it makes me laugh every time. Imagine a little kid puffing out his chest and throwing on a blanket as a cape. Now imagine a grown man doing it and taking himself seriously. It's adorably pathetic. Meanwhile, the use of cinematography and the Chekhov's gun setup and payoff for numerous plot devices and character traits shows that a lot of thought, skill, and care went into every aspect of the film. Little winks to films of the past, big slams to the DCEU and superhero tropes in general. The movie is so cheesy in such a gloriously well-constructed way, the movie geek part of my brain went into overload. Look, I know I'm getting a little too into why the movie worked and making it sound dry, but Shazam is a genuinely laugh-out-loud good time, and it does superheroes better than we've seen in a while. How they managed to make a silly kids flick with magic and monsters have a better Superman than the actual Superman movies is a mystery. I sincerely enjoyed this movie. It may drag on a bit during the final confrontation between Billy and the main villain, but at least the color coding and directing made it visually instructive. The way Dave Sandberg and Henry Gayden built these characters makes the audience identify with them and cheer for them more than the previous installments in the DCEU franchise. This was the first movie that after I watched it, I wanted the DCEU to continue. Maybe for once a studio will learn the right lesson from a success, and the planned sequel will be just as worthy. Sometimes you just have to let your heroes be heroes. And Shazam is worthy of that name. And that's it today for Hugh's Reviews. I'd like to thank Moons of Vega Photography and all the listeners out there for your continued support. Keep dreaming, keep flying, and as always, happy viewing. Shazam!